Hi guys, here is the answer key, the video answer key for your fractions, decimals, and percents practice quiz. Remember that the next time I see you, we'll be having a quiz over this information. So I'm going to number these just so that as I'm talking to you about them, I can refer to the number. So I'm going to call this one number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. All right, so you can see I've numbered them all the way to the bottom. All right, so looking at the first chart, the directions say, complete the table with the common memorized fractions, decimals, and percents that are equivalent. Simplify the fractions. So that means we want our fractions in the lowest terms so that the bottom and the top can't be divided by the same number anymore. All right, so again, these were the ones that we should have memorized. We want to get these memorized. So we know that 1/4 would be the decimal 25 hundredths and the percent 25%. We know that 3/10, we read that as 3/10, that's going to be 3/10 for the fraction, and then we move that decimal point 2 places to get our percent, so that's 30%. Our next one, 50%. If we move that decimal point back 2 places, this would be 0.5. And then while there are several in our memory chart that equals 50%, several fractions, we want the one that's in lowest terms, which would be the 1/2. Then 0.33 repeating is going to be 33, and remember 0.3 repeating percent. Remember, we've got to show that this isn't exactly 33%, but that it's 33% with 3.3% repeating. We've got to get that 0.3 repeating in there. And then as a memorized fraction, we remember that this one is 1/3. If it were 0.66 repeating, it would have been 2/3. 5/8, another one of ours. It's a little bit harder for me to remember, but this one is 0.625. Remember, the eighths are the ones that are going to have the 3-digit equivalents. And then we move that decimal point over 2 places to make this 62.5%. Then we've got 60% here. Move that decimal point back 2 places to get my decimal. So this is 0.6. Of course, we can drop off that 0. It won't hurt if you leave it there, but remember, zeros after numbers that are in decimals don't add anything. And then our fraction for this one in lowest terms would be 3/5. And again, there were others that were equal to 60% on our memorization chart, but this is the one that's in lowest terms. 10/10 is equal to the number 1. That's our decimal. Even though it doesn't have a decimal in it, we know that decimal is hiding out right there. And then, of course, that's 100%. If you got a 10 out of 10 on a quiz, you would have 100%. Okay, so down on the bottom, these are the ones that we didn't memorize that we have to do our work for. This one says, convert the following fractions, decimals, and percents, and fill in the missing values in the chart. Be sure to simplify all fractions. Show all work to the side or below the chart. Hint, these are not necessarily memorized values. All right, so 6 divided by 16, to change from our fraction to our decimal, we have to take the numerator and divide by the denominator. So for number 8, I'm going to show my work. I'm going to take 6 and divide it by 16. I can't divide 16 into 6, so I add a decimal point and a 0. 16 will divide into 60. Oh, maybe bring that decimal point up. Remember, if it's in the house, slide it up to the roof. 3 times. And 3 times 16 is 48. We do our subtraction. 8 can't be taken away from 0, so we regroup. 8 from 10 is 2, and 4 from 5 is 1. We're not done yet, so we add a 0 and bring it down. And now we're dividing 16 into 120. It will go in 7 times, and 7 times 16 is 112. We do our subtraction. 10 minus 2 is 8. Still not done, so we add a 0 and bring it down. And 16 divides into 80 evenly 5 times. 5 times 16 is 80. Subtract, and we're at 0. So our decimal for 6/16 by taking the numerator and dividing by the denominator becomes 0.375, 375 thousandths. To change that to a percent, we move that decimal point over 2 places, and it becomes 37 5/10%. All right, now we're down here, 32 hundredths. So to change this to a fraction, we say it, we read it, 32 hundredths, we write it, 32 hundredths, and then we reduce it. Both of these can be divided by 4. And so in lowest terms, this would be 8/25. That's the answer I'm looking for. And then, of course, to change it to a percent, move my decimal point 2 places to the right, and that's 32%. 65%. To go to a decimal, move my decimal point back 2 places. So this becomes 65 hundredths. Say it, write it, read it, read it, write it, reduce it. So 65 hundredths, write it down. Both of these can divide by 5. And we reduce here to 13/20. Number 11, 17/20. I need to take that numerator, divide it by that denominator. So here's my work for number 11. My numerator is 17, my denominator is 20. Add a decimal point, slide it up, add a 0. 220 divides into 170 8 times. 8 times 20 is 160. Do my subtraction. Add a 0, bring it down, and 20 divides into 100 5 times evenly. So my decimal is 85 hundredths, 0.85, and then my percent, slide that over, that decimal point over 2 places, which is equal to multiplying by 100. Percents are always out of 100. All right, I've got 88 hundredths. So to change that to a fraction, I'm going to read it, 88 hundredths, write it, and then I'm going to reduce it. Again, both of these are divisible by 4, and this becomes 22/25. And then to change from my decimal to my percent, move this decimal point 2 places to the right, and we've got 88%. 77%. Change it to a decimal, move the decimal point back 2 places, 77 hundredths. To change it to a fraction, read it, write it, reduce it. Good news is 77/100 can't be reduced, so we're good there. All right, that is your practice quiz. Study these a little bit, maybe review the video here, and be ready for the quiz on Tuesday or Wednesday. See you then. Bye, guys.